Um, so what I'm going to do with my template cube here is I think it'd be kind of fun to make it like a charcoal briquette and then have the flames coming off of that. So the first thing I'm going to do with my template cube is I'm just going to rasterize it because I'm not going to make it bigger or smaller from here. And then I'm going to push the value of it to be pretty dark, like a charcoal briquette. Use a mask to... Everybody remembers how to make masks, right? Right? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to use my mask to round out the corners. And I'm going to pick one of my hard brushes like the Ink Organic. And this would, theoretically I should have a charcoal briquette reference here, but the main focus of this is fire. So, and I've painted this a few times before, so I'm just winging it. I don't recommend you wing it. I recommend finding some reference. But it honestly won't be super visible by the time we're done, I don't think. Yeah, something like that. I'm just going to apply the mask just to keep things expedient. And then I'm going to come through inside and I'm going to lock the transparency, this little Purina symbol right here, chessboard, so that I can just paint to make it more rounded. What's going on there? I can actually see that I didn't totally get... There's like little ghosts of the corners there, so just delete it. All right, and I'm going to take my reference and put those in a group so I don't have to worry about them. Lock it. And now I'm going to start with a clipping mask above it, and I'm just going to throw some texture onto this charcoal briquette. Like I said, this isn't super important to get perfectly. It's just I just want it to read underneath. So I'm going to use my rock brush to sort of break up these edges. Maybe make the rock brush really feels like cheating. It works super well. I wish I could say I made it, but my friend Knox, if you haven't seen his paintings, he's a concept artist named Knox is Mad. He's French, so his I don't know. I'm not gonna say anything bad about Knox. I love him, but it's a very French name for it's a very French like pen name. But he's an amazing digital painter, and I have a few of my brushes are from him. So this rock brush is one of them. Anyway, so now I got this charcoal briquette. Just merge that together. So essentially, what I want to do from here is I want to draw some fire on top of it. I could come through and put maybe some glowing embers like we had on our burned tree. So maybe I'll do that real quick. Before we get too caught up with the fire part. Just using the rock brush again. But I think nice, like bright red will work better than this yellow. And come in with the Sketch Dude chalk to sort of put edges on it. Oops. So yeah, whenever you use a pattern brush, you want to come back in with sort of a normal brush and adjust the edges and clean things up. You'll hear me say that all semester. Like you're not done on the first pass with the pattern brush. You got to come in with a normal brush after. So, what's wrong with these embers, these glowing embers right now? Anybody have an idea? Do they feel very glowy? No. So we need to pump up those values, right? Like it's still pretty bright. It's up pretty high, but it's not showing that glow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a layer called Color Dodge. And Color Dodge is awesome, but it is very powerful and it's very easy to overdo. So I use it in sort of small doses like this with the bright value right along the edges of some of these things. And you'll see with the lava cube how I use this too. But typically with the Color Dodge, you want to use not pastel colors. Like you want to use like an actual saturated color. If it's oh, I'm using the eraser. Stupid. I had the eraser set to the same brush. Okay. But like you can see it just makes these really intense. So like, for example, the magic dust cube, this would be a very good layer mixing, like a mixing layer, what do you call it? Mixing layer mode to use for this. You can even come in with like the main dude nice and soft and big and just have it like that. So now we've got this glowing ember. All right, now we're ready to paint fire. Oh, and save. Don't forget to save. I'll just save it here for now. I'll just remember to move it later. Okay. So now I'm going to do a new layer that's not part of this like clipping mask tree, just on its own, because I want the fire to grow on top of the charcoal. Like I want it to extend past the boundaries. All right. And so one of the things about fire is that it's a light source and it's translucent. So we need to be able to basically, like if you look at like this reference here, there are these layers to the fire, right? So we're just going to make those the same way by making layers of it. And I'm just going to use the lasso tool and I'm just going to draw And it's really hard not to draw like cartoony fire. You know, I don't want it to look like a hot rod, but I have trouble not drawing like Woody Woodpecker style fire, but we'll get there. I'm going to edit the shape of it a little bit to make it a little bit more organic. But so I could just hit it with a big soft brush like this and leave it so that there's a little bit of translucency, or I could come in like, let's say with a gradient, the gradient to transparent, foreground to transparent. I like that one. That kind of thing. But for right now, I'm just going to leave it like that. And then I'm going to make another layer on top with a different value, a different color. With this yellow, I suppose. Right. And right now it's looking pretty cartoony, and that's okay because I'm going to come through and adjust these edges to make them not so cartoony, but I just want to get like a shape to work with. Right. And I'm going off of my reference for shapes, and you know, I think one thing to remember is that fire doesn't usually go horizontal. It's usually going up and down, right? I mean, on like whatever, I guess whatever direction the wind blows, it could move the direction of it. But as long as you're making like vertical shapes and sort of having a mix of big, medium, and small sort of flames, I think it should read pretty well. So I'm just using the lasso to make big, medium, and small shapes. Doing a mix of orange and yellow and red. All right. So it's not as translucent as it could be, and I actually did everything on 2 layers, but that's okay. Because I'm just going to merge those. That's fine. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a mask and come through with, I could use a soft brush. I also have these fun brushes called 1-edge and 2-edge brush. Basically what these do is that if you notice, it's got like one hard edge and one soft edge on the 1-edge brush. And you can make sort of these fades on the 2-edge brush. You can make like kind of, we'll get to the 2-edge brush in a second, but it can make these really fun sort of flames like that. But anyway, so I'm working on a mask on the, let me go back to the 1-edge brush, sorry. And I'm just sort of adjusting the edge of this flame so that it gets a little translucent towards the outside. And so I guess what Nick was saying about it getting thicker towards the center, it's maybe not thicker is the word. I think it would be more opaque, right? Less transparent. But anyway, I'm just coming through and kind of cutting it up. And yeah, it looks pretty good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with that color dodge layer Where'd you go? Okay, here. And I'm going to hit it. You know, it's going to be brighter in the center. I don't want to necessarily blow it out like in this photo. I like this photo here, but you do want it to feel like it's creating light. So it's going to get really bright in the hottest areas, which would be in the center. That's the eraser. So I'm just going to use the main dude, nice and soft, to come through and like really make it a lot brighter in the center. Yeah, pretty big. Just hit it. And same thing, just kind of erase back out of it in certain areas. All right, and I'm just going to merge it down so that it's just kind of there. I don't know, maybe it's better. No, okay, I'll just merge it down. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust these shapes because these shapes are, like I said, really cartoony, really kind of, you know, fake looking, stylized looking. And so I'm going to use something that I hardly ever use, but I use it for situations like this. I'm going to use the smudge tool, and I don't even remember where it is because I don't use it that often. There he goes. It's under the blur tool. It's right there, smudge, and it's just like a finger. And this might make my computer melt while I'm while I'm doing it. But essentially what I'm going to be doing is coming through and pulling certain edges here and making sort of this like liquid effect with the fire. Adjusting it. And like pulling up, I suppose, looks better than pulling down. But we'll see. Like I said, this might make my computer like be patient with this one. Don't, like, if it's not showing up at first, don't start just like making a bunch of strokes, because each one of those is like your computer's registering it and like trying to do it. Like it's trying its best to do your bidding, but so yeah, just pulling straight up, getting this liquid fire. And it's starting to look a lot more flame-like, right? So from here, I mean, you could do that more, but I think honestly, like, you know, you don't want it to look like a finger painting either. Like I want to keep some of those hard edges in there. I like them. So I'm just going to leave that as is and come back in. Maybe come in with another mask and just kind of clean up some of these areas that are looking a little too artificial, a little too smudge brushy. Right. And so to make that center feel hot, like to make something feel really bright, what do you need? What do you think you need? Well, to make something feel bright, you need something dark, right? Like you need that contrast between light and dark. Because like if everything's bright, then nothing's bright. Does that make sense? Or it's like my parents used to say, if everyone's special, no one's special. Go to your room. I'm locking the door. just kidding. Just saying if people are listening. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a multiply layer and use a warm, like I'm trying to get this stuff. Oops. This stuff like surrounding the the brighter areas. Like if you notice there's these hot red areas in between these sort of cloudy flames. So I'm going to do that. A little bit of a darker, more saturated red. And you know what? Maybe I'll try using the cloud brush for this so it looks a little smoky. So I'm going to use my cloud one, maybe mist. Oh, I got smoke. I got a smoke brush. And I'm with these smoke brushes, I like to lower the flow. Like 9 times out of 10, I'm using 100% opacity, 100% flow. But with these, they can look really patterny if you keep the flow up all the way. So I like to lower the flow quite a bit, like maybe 20, 30%. And that way you can just kind of hit it like even 20%. Because this will look very much like a pattern brush if you're not careful. And so the whole purpose of this is to get a different texture and a different value in between. And I'm going a little heavy with it, but I'm going to come back in and use my main dude eraser to erase, especially out in the center. Yeah, something like that. Like I don't want this to be so apparent. So maybe I'll come in with the main dude brush instead of the cloud brush and put a little bit of that warmth in there too with like an orange. It's still on the multiply layer, so it's everything I put down is going to make things darker. But I don't want to make, like I said, I don't want to make this like, you know, you want to make this cube make sense next to all of your other cubes too. So you don't want it to be like this 4 cube tall cube. So I might actually come through and squish this a tiny bit. The nice thing about fire is that you can do stuff like this because it's, you know, sort of an organic shape. And then from here, I'm just going to come through with my main dude brush and start painting in on a normal layer and just start getting some of these smaller, you know, if we're going to have big, medium, and small, we want to have some smaller details like we've got here. Can even have some stuff that gets pretty close to white in the center or 100%. Like this is a case where you can use your really extreme values, but notice that 100% white looks almost cool. So you want to be careful about that. And this is where I might use the 2-edge brush again to come in and make some of these smaller sort of tendrils that are happening. So I'm actually going to do, I'm selecting all these fire layers and I'm going to go to transform, distort. Is it warp or is it distort? Oh, you know what? They have to be merged. So I'm just going to, I can merge them, right? Not yet. Can't merge them yet. I just want to make this center part, like I want to pull it up a little bit more. So maybe I could actually use the smudge tool for this. Because it feels a little flat in the center, right? And so fire should always go up, especially in the hottest area. So I can pull this, smudge it even more. So, and the smudge tool makes you have soft edges, like it, because it's blurring those edges, it's making things softer. So something like this. From here, I want to get like, little crackles in the fire. So I'm going to come in with the spatter brush. Maybe with the color dodge layer. Oh, and the flow's all the way down, so I got to put the flow back up to 100, but a little bit of that can look fun. And I want to make, like, it's getting close to being done here, but I want to make it feel even brighter. So I'm going to push my charcoal cube a little bit darker, just around where the fire is, because your eyes wouldn't be able to adjust to both, right? Like if you're looking at the flames, if they're getting adjusted for the flames, the charcoal would appear really, really dark. So I'm pushing those a little bit darker. And I'm just going to move all the fire layer up a little bit. Something like that. I'm actually going to group the fire and call it fire. And put a mask on it. And with the mask, I can make it translucent in some areas again. Like the name of the game is to make sure it doesn't feel like a sticker that's on top of it. You want it to feel, right? You want it to feel like there's layers to it that are at different sort of opacities. Right. And I wonder if I could warp it now. No? I wonder if I merge it, what'll happen. I think what'll happen when I merge it, yeah, those multiply layers get a little funky. So what I can do is I can go through, where's that multiply? Right here. So, when you merge these effects layers, they have a tendency to look funny if you merge them without the layers that they're mixing with, right? So when I merge this with just the fire by itself without the background, that's why the it's not looking as dark. But what you can do is before you merge it, you could select all of it, and you can so just hold control and click each of the layers of the fire, right? And like maybe you don't want this part or this part, you don't need that. But if you hit Control Shift C, that will copy everything flattened. So basically what that gives us is it all flattened, right? But the problem is, let's say, like I said, I want to make all these cubes work on different layers. So when you see it now on a white background, it's got that gray, which I mean, I guess is okay, but I don't think it'll look totally correct because the edges are kind of funky and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bite the bullet and merge it without the background. Just merge that fire layer all together, that group, and apply layer mask. And I'm just going to push certain areas darker with just like a dark, deep red. To simulate what we had with the multiply. But basically, I'm merging this so I can do this warp. And warp is fun because you can grab different parts of it and move. Like it uses this grid, but it can only do it on like a single layer. It can't do it on multiple layers selected. And that's that, just however you want it to be. I keep wanting to scoot it down because I don't want this to be super tall, right? You can also do, instead of smudge, you can also do liquify, wherever liquify went. I don't use it very often. Where did liquify go? Oh, you could just render a flame. Let's see what happens. It's not going to look good. Whatever. Liquify. There we go. Right up there. Okay, so actually need to make sure your transparency is not locked. Liquify. And so with this, you can do even more sorts of funky stuff. But I would just be a little careful because you can go too far with it. But it can get some really nice effects that you can't really get just by painting by hand. So, oops, I don't want that. So yeah, I mean, you can play with it. Like I said, this is getting into the realm of like playing around in Photoshop, which is less what we're doing here and less of about painting and more about just manipulating digital filters. But, you can get some kind of fun stuff like that. So from here, what I want to do is I actually want to take my background. So I could either have a black background like this, but most of my cubes I want to work on a white background. So I'm actually going to take a white background, make a layer underneath everything, and put a little bit of darkness using the smoke brush. Get some dark smoke behind it. That way I'm sort of artificially creating a dark background. And like I said, with the smoke brush, you want to use a lower flow. And just sort of take your time and build it up. One thing I like to do with the smoke brush too is to lock the transparency of it and take some of your ambient colors and just come back into it so that, some of the fire is lighting the smoke in certain areas. So you can get a little bit of red in the smoke. You can get stuff like that. And after that, I'm going to just do a little bit of more glow. Using the main dude and a color dodge. This is sort of like the last little bit. I'm just going to use a really warm orange, like really saturated too. Just hit it with this color dodge right at the end. I'm not sure how well it shows up on Zoom, but it looks like really glowy. And what we could do too is like another layer behind everything, like under everything, and we could have a little bit like color pick from there, have a little bit of that glow on the surface. Oops. But you want to think about it because like right underneath it, it would actually be a shadow cast from the charcoal, right? So I like to like paint it and then put a shadow, come back in with a shadow. And again, this is one of those things like you don't want to do too much of this. It's just there to like make, make it feel like it's in the scene. So I'll come in and erase. Or I could use a mask so I don't have to repaint it if I screw up the eraser, but I could push it more warm if I want. I think that's better. Yeah, something like that. And then the bonus is now that it works on a white background, it'll work really well on a black background. So making the fire work on the white background is much harder than making it work on the black background. But I think you can do it if you want to try. But you just can't paint it straight up with a white background to start. So does anybody have any questions? Anybody have some suggestions? Do you think this is believable? It's wonderful. You think it's the best thing I've ever painted? Thanks, guys. You're really sweet. I really need that today.
I want to spray water onto it.
Cool.